impact on higher education. Today, we have prepared a couple of really interesting panelists, and I have the pleasure to present to you today Dr. Samuel R. Schubert, the Associate Director of Webster Vienna Private University and also Assistant Professor of International Relations. Today with us is also Professor Johan Roos, and he's a professor and Chief Academic Officer at Hope International Business School. Today with us is also Dr. Kalin Yanev, a PhD and also Chief Business Officer at UNIMI. Initiated and architectured the artificial intelligence matching tool that became Advent Group's innovative solution for global MBA recruitment 4 years ago. Again, thank you for being here today. As I mentioned, the webinar will be dedicated on artificial intelligence and the impact on higher education. We know that as technology continues to advance at this unprecedented rate, it's crucial to examine how they will impact the higher education. Recent researches showed that artificial intelligence has the potential to revolutionize the educational system in ways that surpass any other technological tool. But how can this be achieved, and what are the implications? In this upcoming session, we'll delve into these questions and more. We'll discuss how artificial intelligence can be used to personalize education, offer targeted learning opportunities, and even assist with student recruitment. We'll also explore the ethical considerations involved in the leveraging of this technology and share strategies on ensuring responsible use by educational institutions. I would like to start with one broader question to all of our panelists today. And the question is the following: what are the most significant opportunities for artificial intelligence in the international higher education in today's world of rapid technological advancement? And I would like to address first Mr. Samuel Schubert. Mr. Schubert?
Sorry, very sorry, I was muted. So, always a good beginning to a Zoom meeting. So what are the most important and significant opportunities for AI? Well, there are several at several fronts. First of all, higher education, of course, is a broad area, part in terms of administration and running of a university, part in terms of ongoing research, and then, of course, part of teaching and learning, right? And so if we look at all those, there are areas where AI creates significant opportunities, a lot of challenges, and I think we'll come to those challenges a little bit later. But from an opportunity standpoint, I would argue that on the administrative side, AI has the ability to filter through big quantities of data and cut down routine and complicated work in a substantial manner, so that it's efficient and easier to identify. Let's say you have 100,000 candidates, or you have a list of 100,000 people, to figure out which students fit your needs in your programs, which would be the highest likelihood to succeed. That could be something that would be, from the business side, very, very valuable. On the research side, both from the faculty as well as from the students, a well-formulated, well-positioned sequence of questions can help someone create a research design, can help them to find sources and identify them, depending on which tools they're using and who's providing them. And again, I'll leave out the negative ones because we'll come to them. But from the learning standpoint, there is a way for students to test themselves, a way for students to interact with knowledge, and to challenge their own particular analysis to find alternatives if they're taught how to do so. Those are the areas that I would start with.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. And Professor Roos, same question to you. What are the most significant opportunities for AI in international higher education, according to you?
I think we Samuel, of course, is right in everything he says. I do think we face a calculator moment right now. Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when we started to use a Texas Instruments 52, whatever they call it, a Hewlett Packard 25 or 45, and how that changed a lot in school, and how a lot of teachers thought, this is, not good, because you cheat, you don't learn, you do this. And it actually took decades before there was an acceptance of the calculator as a really useful tool, because you could do so many other things and focus on the really important stuff. You can, a little bit like Samuel saying, you can focus on the important stuff and let the tool take care of the routine stuff. And I think that's a good sort of analogy for what we see now. So of course it changes in the way that Samuel is saying. I think there's, in a sense, I'll try to supplement with just two aspects. One is and I'd be happy to talk more about that, because we're totally into this, is the focus on skills in higher education, and especially I'm in an international business school, 5-6 campuses throughout the world, 143 nationalities, but we're moving skills to the forefront on top of knowledge. And of course you can see this as a skills development. This is a very useful skill that is totally just quickly surfacing to the top of the list of employability skills. That's one thing. But there is this other deeper or higher purpose of education beyond sort of the vocational, and that is, there's a reason for the classical education giving you an overview of stuff, of the laws of nature and of doing things the right way and so forth. So there is a higher level purpose, but I think this may even change our education to make people more wiser and better citizens, in a sense. So I think there are very fundamental changes coming up, and we're already seeing happening. So I'll stop there and happy to discuss more.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Of course, Professor Roos already mentioned that AI can change the international higher education system. What is your take on that? Do you agree with this?
Yeah, of course, I agree with what Johan and Samuel said, but I would like to go in a slightly different direction. Maybe I'll put out a bit bigger thesis. For me, the most interesting opportunity, for which I'm highly skeptic that it will happen, but the AI purely how we see it, I'm not talking about ChatGPT sort of AI, because we have all different types of AIs being around already, etc. What is quite interesting for me is the opportunity. Again, I'm saying most probably will not happen, is to challenge the power structure, purely knowledge-based power structure in the universities, meaning the asymmetry between a professor and a student. So of course this is not a new thing. We have been quite optimistic when, probably we were optimistic when Google came, internet came around. Our dream was to have students who are challenging the professors, students who are able and are allowed to produce knowledge. Unfortunately, I don't think we saw this. I might be wrong, but I don't think we saw this. So this is sort of the soft version of the opportunity that I see. I mean, it's kind of the dream, a student comes and says, okay, but you're wrong here. Okay, but I saw this and I have completely different hypothesis than what you're saying. You professor, you're dogmatic there. You're telling us something, but let me challenge you, let me put some facts there. So this is the soft version. Of course, the hard version of this sort of scenario is, and I'll put it in the beginning there, like substituting a professor with an AI. Okay, so I'm quite skeptic that this can happen for many, many reasons. But okay, on theory, we will progress a little, we'll have new generations of AI. On theory, okay, this is a possibility there. Why it's interesting for me is just because we realize that in the university, in academia, we have this power structure, okay, and it's, how should I say, it's analytically a priori true. You go to the university in order to get knowledge, from somebody who knows more than you, right? So this is natural. This is a good thing. This is how we perceive academia. However, this bleeds. I'm talking about social sciences. I'm talking about humanities. I'm not talking about the big brother, you know, the natural sciences that are they always been given as an example, you know, since Kant, even before this. So I'm talking about social sciences, humanities. So we go there, somebody has the knowledge. However, this leads to very incremental change in the knowledge that we create. So again, I'm skeptic that this can happen, but this may somehow help in this direction. And I'll stop. Yeah.
This is an opportunity, of course, and I would like to also touch on the other side of the discussion. Dr. Samuel Schubert, maybe you can address that. What are the main challenges faced by the artificial intelligence in education? Are there any potential risks or concerns that we should be thinking about now?
Oh, yes, they are enormous. The list is very long. You know, when I listened right now to what Kalin had said and what Johan had said, and of course, I fully agree that this is a calculator moment. And I'm reminded in this calculator moment of my own interaction. It was actually not the TI 52, but the TI 40. Probably gives away my age, but I had a class on chemistry mathematics, an advanced one in high school, and the teacher said that we could use calculators in order to calculate the atomic weights of the chemical interactions we were dealing with. So I went home and I took this TI-42 and I programmed it to give me the formulas, you know, that I needed to know for the exam. And I took the exam and I did really well. And she was very upset, the teacher, and accused me of cheating because, well, I did. And then I said, but I didn't cheat. You said I could use the calculator. You didn't say what I could do with it. I just simply programmed all the formulas in it, which this is the real problem that then comes with these tools, is how any of them get used in the end. And the danger that we face, that we faced with calculators, that we still face with calculators, that we face with telephones, that we face with AI, and then I'll come to what Kalin spoke about this power structures and all of this. We have built knowledge generation after generation through recording and language, through writing, through experience, through now modern versions of media to record them. And we learn from these past events. Now, if you study what I study, politics, then you'll probably say we never learn anything. But there are some things that we do actually learn. We learn how to better build buildings. We learn how to better design energy systems and networks and infrastructures and universities and administrations and businesses. Now, if all of that knowledge is something that's at my fingertips, that I don't ever need to actually learn how it came about, I never actually integrated. And I use AI because it has access to all that knowledge, and all I need to do is ask the questions. Then I run the danger that if ever I lose that AI, I no longer know what to do. I'm lost on the desert island and I cannot create my own radio. I cannot create my own facilities, and I go really back to the dark ages. In terms of the challenging of the professor-student power structure and things of that nature, well, as a professor, that's a fascinating concept. I mean, the nature of a university classroom is one not just of imparting knowledge blankly on people, but is inspiring to think and to reflect. And there are variations in different types of education systems in France and Germany and the United States and the UK and Russia and all over the world. But in the end, the professor should have more knowledge than the student and should have more tools available to them in their mind to be able to do it, particularly in the methods and in the approaches and in the hows of how you get knowledge and of how you analyze the knowledge. And that, I mean, I could give you a lecture on some event or some historical thing, but this doesn't mean anything other than a bunch of names, numbers, dates, and places. But if you are capable of analyzing it and putting it through a model and doing it in that way, and then comparing it with the way you would read it through a different lens, then that is a special tool and a special skill that you gain at a university. And I don't see that as losing out. Now, can an AI outperform a professor? That is the real question. And right now, the answer is no, they can't. Doesn't mean that it won't in the future, right? And it may very well, but we are not yet there. And even if it has more knowledge from the professor, will it have the heart? Will it have the soul? Will it have the ability to really connect with the person, to be warm when it's necessary to be warm, to be cold when it's necessary to be cold, to really understand and interpret how knowledge is gained, when somebody is afraid, how they overcome that fear, how you beef up their skills. So that's, you know, we have, you know, it's funny, but if you go back to Isaac Asimov's early short stories, there is a tale he tells of a little girl who is raised by a robot. And the parents are so unhappy that this robot is the perfect nanny. It's the absolute perfect nanny. And so they get rid of the robot. But by then it's too late, because the child is so attached to the robot that it becomes depressed without the robot, and they have to go find this robot. And it's one of the early stories that put together. And I think it puts in good context of this. So
I would even go even further than this. So first you're saying, okay, we have this knowledge, we unplug, so we are lost. No, actually, we don't have this knowledge even. I mean, you can ask ChatGPT to explain you a theorem, right? Or to explain you, I don't know, the critique of purism or something like this. So you will get it. The thing is that you will not understand it, you know, because knowledge in a certain domain, this is like developing a language. It's a systematic studying. In the end, you should be able to speak this language, right? So it's not like knowledge is there, ChatGPT will give it to me and I will use it. It's impossible, right? So if you want to go in, not on the superficial level. As for the professor-student discussion, I would say the thing is that it's when you interact with the professor, you don't interact only with the things he or she says, not with you interact with the person, is what Dr. Schubert was saying. So for a human being, in my opinion, it's really hard to disassociate from the personal story of this, you know, of this professor, lecturer. And then if you go back to your memories from university, you will remember professors, and mostly you will remember who they were, how they spoke, maybe something about some trivia about their life, etc. So that's why I'm a bit skeptic of substituting, although it sounds really nice to me. But I think this is impossible. I mean, it's sort of a piece of art, you know, professorship. You go there, and part of the art that you present to the students is your own life. You know, they perceive what you're saying through your authorship. Of course, we remember Roland Barthes, you know, the death of the author, the reader, the power of the reader. I don't believe in this. I think that the students, they need your personality. They need your they need your life story behind of what you're giving to them.
Thank you very much, Kalin. And I would like to also ask Professor Roos on his take.
Okay, it's kind of interesting to listen to you because I think there's some kind of assumption of a classical educational model. You know, it's been around for a while. It's a very successful model. It's been around for a while. But the education I'm involved in, and I've spent many years in various schools on this, is more sort of the notion of, yes, the professor should know what they're talking about, but they should also be really good at facilitating learning. You know, this notion of like, yes, it's fine to challenge, Kalin. I think a lot of our students are challenging the professors from all over the world, but in other culture that may not be okay. But I think that is very positive in a sense. So you can be, I'll put it this way, the role of the professor is already changing from the sage on the stage to the, not just the facilitator of a discussion, but actually to a curator of really good content from wherever it is and brought into sort of a package and discuss and so forth. So I think that is happening. If we now talk about large language model, generative AI, ChatGPT, for example, I think that can be extremely helpful. There's enormous amount of already good cases, good examples out there of how we can use this tool or these tools, because there's others as well, as a way to kind of accelerate this development, that you become sort of really a good facilitator of learning. You don't ban this, you integrate. It's like Sam, we integrate the calculator. We know how it can be used. We actually encourage the use, but then we also ask for example, what are the prompts you gave it? Why did you ask those prompts? What was the next one? What was the intermediate result? What happened there? And then we have a critical discussion and so forth. So I see this just as a very natural evolution to an even more interesting, even more, what should we call it, modernized pedagogy, and as well as assessment. We can talk about that. But I think pedagogy is changing while we are sitting and talking here.
That's really interesting. And here I would like to also include our audience. There are a couple of questions that are already coming from our audience. Obviously, the topic is very, very interesting. So please let me read one of those and you decide for yourself who would like to answer this question. One of the misgivings about using AI is that it replaces the human agent, lecturers, administrators, etc. How a serious problem is this, and are there solutions? This is a question that came from Tess Shetu.
Well, we kind of just talked a little bit about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think if I put it this way, I'm currently, we already started the task force in December at our school to get faculty involved, and this first task force I've ever seen people volunteering to be part of. Faculty want to be involved in it, but sort of to discuss what do we do short term, how do we avoid this, let's ban it and stop like the things they're doing in Italy right now. But how do we kind of embrace this? How do we open this up and how do we work it? Super interesting discussions across the board, across faculty, across policy types and all that. So, and there's no discussion that people are picking this up and taking it, experimenting, learning with the students, because the students are already there. So the faculty have to go in and try and do things. Otherwise, they will be seen as dinosaurs. So all of this is happening, and it's sort of not about replacing. It's very much about complementing, adding on to, enriching. That's my view anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
If I may, Maren, first of all, I very much agree with what Johan just said. I do think that AI presents us with far more opportunities than it does challenges if we use it the right way. And we will use it the right way. And there will be people who misuse it. It just is what it is. This is something that by itself is neither good nor evil. It is just an advantage, a new mechanism by which we can apply the things. Good professors do facilitate learning. That is the key, right? That is the key. Somebody that does not facilitate learning, that just passes on knowledge, really can be replaced with not an AI, but with a simple poster, right? The whole point, if you're familiar with flipped learning environments, for example, which is a fancy way of saying, you know what, go out and do this reading and come in and let's practice it and talk about it. And there in such an environment, what you really need is that the individual, be that a human or be that a computer in the future, is capable of inspiring reflection and thought and use of things. So again, AI here can be a very valuable tool if students are trained to ask why and how, and they go about doing it, and they do it. Because if you turn around and you ask AI, once you get an answer, you ask it why, and you ask it how, and you dig down, that can be very helpful. But if you never know and you never experience how to apply it from one environment to another, if you never know how to ask these kinds of questions, if that's not part of your education environment, and there are variations in this education environment, if that's not present, then you're not learning. And it's that simple. Recall is not the same as learning.
Yeah. Okay. And
if I can add, just if we return to the question of whether it can substitute a human and what are the dangers there, and maybe we can then go to the assessment of what Johan was starting to mention. I think one area that the human being, and it's very awesome to talk about human being, you know, in juxtaposition with something that's just impressive that we came to this point. So human beings, we are in control of what we define as good, bad, true, beautiful, ugly. So just if we go back to how an AI is created, we start with these zeros and ones, you know, like some people rating, this is good, this is well, this is ugly, etc. So this thing is in the hands of the human beings. So in the end of the day, this can't be substituted by AI. You know, we are the ones who in the end will say, okay, this AI works. This AI is giving us a true statement. This AI is producing a beautiful picture. So in this sense, I really don't see near future how this role can be substituted, because all these concepts, as we know, not to be too relativist in this, but they're fluid. It's not like we can say, okay, this is a whale and this will be like this for centuries. You know, these things, they change. Same goes with whether a statement is true or whether it's valuable. So if we go to the assessment here, and I think Johan wanted to talk about this, I really don't think that the AI can substitute the human assessment. Maybe it's too strong of an opinion, but I'm talking again about social sciences, humanities. I'm not talking about the natural sciences, mathematics. So just as a thesis here, it would be interesting to know what.
The beauty is in the eyes of the beholder. Both of you, like all of you, already touched a little bit on the topic of skills and competences, and I would like to also elaborate a little bit more on that. What are the new skills and competences that will be required for educators and students in an AI-driven education system?
Well, you could say that we already had sort of the general term of digital skills pretty much high up, and you know, everybody wanted to have business analytics a couple of years ago, and it's moving and so forth. Now it was machine learning, and now it's generative AI. So if we think of those as skills, it's both for the students, but of course, in order to teach, has to be something on the other side, and in order to facilitate the learning. So that's one thing as well. But I think if you look at the list of what do employers ask for, and I work very closely with Matt Siegelman, who's the CEO of Burning Glass Institute. They analyze billions of data points on job ads. And it's very interesting to see how it shifts over time. So you can say there's a bunch of technical skills that's needed all the time, and generative AI is just jumping ahead on that. Yeah. But there's also some sort of classical business skills you need. You need to be able to budget and market and sell and do things like that. But underlying all of that, on top of the list, are those what I think some of you call soft skills. I always call them human skills. Sort of the whole idea about how do we communicate, how do we collaborate, how can we create new ideas? How can we, offer critical views and change and so forth? And ultimately, how can we imagine sort of a lot of new things? So I think those are there all the time. And now we're talking about sort of another layer of education, which has to be designed and redesigned to use these tools also to help us with these things. But the risk that there is a darker side, of course, that we end up with students studying alone, being sort of totally self-referential. Eventually, if we look at the generative, the large language model, we will soon run out of data to train the models on that is human fabricated. So we will have AI fabricated text that will train the models on, and that will be soon. So what is the imagination? Where is the newness of all of this? So there's a bigger sort of picture here on the skills, which ultimately come back to your humanity, which perhaps aligned with what Kalin is saying, that it's unlikely we kind of get one of these 2001 scenario or any other of the Arthur C. Clarke or any other popular culture sort of sci-fi view of the robots taking over, at least soon.
If I may jump in there, I think that this is an important point to indicate. I think there's a great misunderstanding of what artificial intelligence is, a confusion of artificial intelligence and artificial sentience. That the point where the computer is aware that you're insulting it and does some revenge against you, the point where you walk over to the plug with your home PC and it sends an electric shock out at you in order to make sure that you don't turn it off. This ultimate survival instinct that we attribute to life does not exist anywhere near what we are talking about in artificial intelligence. That's the first thing to do is to stop the panic, right? That's the first thing. The second thing is to recognize that we can use AI in wonderful, wonderful ways, because in order for AI tools to work, they need a massive data set. Right? This massive data set lets you do things and gain access to things that no search engine could do before. Example, right? You are a young person and you are designing a web page or a mobile app, and you try to figure out how to make a little little box pop up and move across the screen that you can do and turn on and turn off, and you don't know how to do it. Now, in the 1980s and 90s, what you do is you send an email to a friend, or you'd call a friend and say, hey, do you know a code that can do this? They would call a friend, and you would have this social network around designing a set of codes that would then become an idea for an app that might even become a company and an idea, right? Now, you type it in and say, this is what I want to an AI, and you do it alone. The social element of learning is gone. And that it is honestly too early to say what the implications of that are. I cannot tell you what happens. What I can tell you is that eventually people will be living on other planets. They will be traveling across space, and we will be in this situation where people are learning a great deal alone. And we just went through that in the COVID shutdown. So we've been there, we've done that, we've seen what's bad, we've seen what works, what does not work. And I think what we need to do now is to figure out how we can maximize the benefits of this AI. Now, the negative side here, again, where is the AI system getting its data? So to answer the question that I just posed before from the programmer, it's pulling from all these different places and piecing together to fit your question and needs. And that's great. That is really brilliant and would require a complicated social network to do. The problem is, how do we go ahead and address this danger of isolation in education? And how can we do our best to maximize what is learned, I want to say offline, implying not in the social group, but it's the wrong terminology. So that's just thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Johan.
Maybe if I can just add here. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, the misunderstanding of what is AI, we have to be very clear. I mean, probably some people imagine that it's a simulation of what the human brain does. No, it has nothing to do with our way of producing the same output whatsoever. It's just we have to know this. In terms of process, AI is just very, very different of what we do to do similar output, right? So that should be clear. So a human being will always have the opportunity to give something there, you know, just that's what Dr. Schubert was saying. I just want to add. As for the danger, well, and this is what we human beings have. We have different view on what is dangerous, what is good, and what is bad. For me personally, or if you call it for my aesthetic system, if we can make people learn by themselves, this would be amazing. I'm just very skeptical on this. Because we had the whole internet with all the knowledge, you know, we had Google, etc., in front of the students. I don't know what's your impression, but I don't think that many of them were able to sit and systematically learn what they were given in the university, right? So I think this will be exactly the same case with the AI. Easier it is, in my opinion, we become lazier. You know, we know that it's there. So whenever we want to reach out, we will get it. So here it's, this is my opinion. I would be actually happy if somebody can study alone and just go through, you know, I don't know, the whole calculus by herself or by himself. This would be amazing. But I don't think this will happen, honestly. It's just how it works.
There's a lot to learn, Kalin, you know. There's a lot to learn. If you think about it, it's not knowledge, maybe it's just information, but an amount of information available now and which was generated over the last couple of years, etc., it's enormous compared to everything. So if we have to learn everything that's already out there, it will take a long time to learn. So that's why I think the more we move ahead, especially in higher education, I think the notion of learning to learn is even more important. And sort of connected with that, I just want to draw your attention to a very good article, an op-ed actually in Wall Street Journal in February, published by no less than Henry Kissinger, 99 or 100 years old, and Eric Schmidt, I think, you know, one of the previous chairs of Google, and some other guy. And they actually talked about this very early on, and they draw a parallel with the Enlightenment. In a sense, during the Enlightenment, we also had an explosion of, you can say, knowledge, scientific knowledge, and in contrast with the thesis of God and the King, which was dangerous at that time, right? So you had that, but in parallel with this dramatic evolution of knowledge, development of knowledge, you had philosophy. You had sort of the development of philosophical ideas about some of the things you mentioned earlier, Kalin. You know, why do we exist, etc. What is it? Sort of metaphysics, ontology, epistemology, ethics, aesthetics, all of these super interesting, sort of very human questions about the why were developed in parallel with the development of knowledge. And they draw our attention to saying that now it is perhaps like we have this explosion of knowledge, and as Samuel was saying, at our fingertip, right? But there's not this understanding in parallel. The philosophy helped us to understand, make sense of, put in the human context, all of this knowledge, slowly, gradually, and this, I think, is a new phenomenon, that philosophy is sort of left behind with this explosion. So I think that has a lot of implications for, on a higher level of scale, what we should teach and how professors should help learning.
I have to absolutely agree, and I would add to that, not just philosophy but ethics, because ethics becomes such a vital part of this question. At what point do you use these tools, AI, and do you cite them, right? At what point is the AI answering because the answers that it gives, is it because of the question you've asked and therefore the credit goes to you? Or is it because of the sophistication of the algorithms that have converted your question into something they can answer based on the data that they have? So this becomes a real hard kind of thing to do. And one of the most difficult things to teach, and therefore also the most fun things to teach, actually, are theory and methods, right? And they sound always the scariest to students, but they're the ones that are of the greatest value, because the method can be taken and ported. The theories are a lens by which to interpret the world and therefore reveal them based on certain variables. So we go through life constantly applying these filters to all the different things we see, and people usually settle in on one. They're very happy with it. They stick with it. Done, finished. And then they screw up, right? And if you learn how to go through life and look at the same thing from a different angle, different theoretical perspectives, apply different methods, then you get a truly different set of possible outcomes and possible inputs to explain the same outcome. And this then is that complexity of thought. And I think that AI can be extremely helpful in doing this. And AI can also be extremely helpful in simplifying otherwise very complex material, particularly articles, for example, that have been written depending on the field of study, but in increasingly quantitative perspectives or with formal modeling that sometimes students are scared to death of. They see the formal model and that's it. They run, they hide under the table. The goldfish ate the paper, et cetera, you know. So if you can do that and you can use it, I think that we will find advantages. And the article in the Wall Street Journal was actually based on a book that Kissinger and Schmidt put out. The name, I have to take a look real quickly, but I think the name was The Age of AI or something. And I also would highly recommend it. It's an interesting read from a nearly 100-year-old man on AI. So
yeah. Okay, I would like to draw your attention on another question, Dr. Yanev. If we talk about the students and their relationship to technology and education from a recruitment perspective, could AI be used for student recruitment purposes, and how that will look like?
Yeah. We have been doing this since 4 years at Unimai. This is our platform for orientation of candidates. So basically, well, it's a predictive AI. So maybe the challenge is it's working. Okay, so we basically take a huge database that we have, and we see which factors in the profile of a candidate would increase his or her probability to apply to a certain school, and we give some certain recommendations. The challenge is here, it is working, right? So the students are using it as a first step, and then they go further in choosing their, business schools, universities. The challenge here with the predictive AI, what we found out, is the trust. And I think this is extremely important topic of now, okay, AI, it's on its peak. I thought it's like 2 years, it was 2 years back, but now I see that it's exactly the peak in which we are really excited about AI or scared, but there is the emotion which actually drives us towards the AI. If you have a predictive AI, this helps tremendously. Now, if I trust the prediction, I will move towards it. If I have an AI that tells me, okay, a candidate like you would apply to, I don't know, to Holt, and I trust it, well, I would somehow comply with this, right? So the element of trust is crucial. But my prediction is the following. I think that soon we will go down on the curve of trust in AI. So we will say, okay, but this AI, okay, this picture, but it's ugly. Or I don't know, this recommendation, but maybe this AI doesn't work. Right? So it will become extremely interesting because then we will go in this sort of, if I can give this metaphor from biology, it's the red queen dance. You have a parasite, you have a host, and they co-evolve together. So the host develops some defense, then the parasite develops some sort of going through the disease defense. So we may have something like this. So we have a sort of a consumer, or I don't know, whatever user. And if the user shows distrust, then the AI should, if we train them regularly and we try to, see how to give better prediction and the users to agree with us. So the AI will start evolving, then the user will start, and you imagine this, it's like a co-evolution of the user and the AI. So I think this would be extremely interesting time. Now it's easy. Okay, we are, at worst, we are very scared, but we react on this. We are either impressed or scared. So it's easy, but soon, and we will go on the curve down. So this is what we were trying to imagine when we were doing our AI. And so our solution is not, it's a trivial solution. We try to retrain again and again. So it's as often as we can. Yeah, just some interesting observation that.
Thank you, Dr. Yanev. Professor Roos, if you allow me, I would like to ask you to share with us some of the best practices for integrating artificial intelligence into higher education that you have stumbled upon so far.
Super good. I actually put a link in the chat just to show that this is just one out of many links. And there's actually a pretty impressive number of repositories of best practice or some practices. Right now we don't know what's best yet, but at least there are practices. We do a bunch of stuff in our school, and I'm encouraging the professors to who are already pretty good at flipping the classroom to just encourage to use these tools. For example, GPT, to do that even more sort of explicitly. And I'm an active promoter of what I would call promptology. This notion of learning how to ask questions, and because it's really about the nature of the questions you ask. So that can be very much integrated in all of this. So, but there's like an endless amount of possibilities. You can generate quizzes, you can generate questions, you can generate competing essays on the same topic and discuss it. I mean, go out and just search for it. There's so much out there. What we're doing is probably just a drip in Mississippi on what is being done. But what I'm trying to do in my role as being responsible for everything academic in our school is to encourage very good professors who are very practice-oriented to do a lot of experimentation and build this into them. At the same time, we're revising curriculums, we're updating our academic policies, and that I think is pretty important. Remember that the default very much is like, how do we ban this? How do we stop students from cheating? That is sort of a natural Luddite, you can say, with not a respectful Luddite comment on this, because it is natural to say, hey, they're cheating on my exam. Well, then you have to redo the way you do an exam, redo the way you think of assessments. And there's already zillions of practices out there. So just go out and search for it. I just put one link in there to help.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Schubert, another question for you would be, what role can governments and policymakers play in supporting the integration of artificial intelligence into higher education?
Well, that's really hard to say because we're not yet at the stage where there's anything to truly regulate. So what are you going to do? Everything that you would want to regulate right now would be an infringement upon free speech and free learning. So I can't imagine there's anything positive that government could do right now, and government is not the answer to all questions. So in the end, what we need is, there will be a time when there will be issues. There will be issues about data security, about what kind of data is allowed to be used by these artificial intelligence machines, networks, for the purposes of interacting in search engines, for example. That is a possibility, but that's a bigger regulatory framework. We haven't even gotten to the stage where we're regulating the notion of algorithms that track social behavior of children. So if we're not there, why would we be talking about the government regulation of AI, which is not yet there?
But
I do
Samuel,
think,
Samuel, if I may say so, Italy has just banned a couple of days ago the use of ChatGPT.
Yes, exactly. And the question is, will it succeed, or will it just create more interest where there was no idea or interest at all? And basically, what has prohibition delivered to us historically? It has almost always led to an underground expansion and growth on interest and curiosity. You ban something, people get interested in it. That's not going to sustain itself in any way. It's a knee-jerk populist reaction. It's something that will not be sustained. And in the end, if you're banning ChatGPT, why ChatGPT? Why not Bing? Why not, why not the Google model? So there becomes then a question of who's doing it selectively and why. So, this, in the end, that's not a sustainable action. On the flip side, we're talking AI in higher education. There are other areas of AI development, not in higher education, but in military hardware, where we could see all sorts of regulation. We could see regulation in the healthcare industry in terms of what AI is allowed to do and allowed to deliver. So this is, we speak about this in higher education, and it's important that we deal with it in higher education because it is everywhere else. And it is highly relevant for when our students leave university. If they come out of university completely unfamiliar with what AI is, completely against the use of AI in some kind of, philosophic bent, then they're going to be in trouble in a world where AI is part of the underlying engine of industry. And we are seeing it in some very, very big industries employing, millions of people around the world. So I think that right now, the area for AI governance, insofar as you want to call it that way, or regulation, is not in the education sector, but is in the usage sector, in healthcare, in military, and other areas, and that will trickle down. But I don't want to see regulation on AI in universities.
Okay, thank you very much for the questions. I would and the answers. Of course, I would like to also encourage our audience to share with us any questions that they might have. Obviously, Professor Roos was kind enough to already answer a couple of them personally, but if you have any additional questions, please let us know. We'll be happy to address them. In the meantime, I would just like to give you a heads up that our next webinar will be on the 27th of April, and we will be exploring a really interesting case study of the intelligent match between students and schools and how skilled recruiters can complement AI to create a winning combination. Attend this webinar, sign up now to learn about the latest AI-powered recruitment trend and how the platform that Mr. Yanev already mentioned, Unimi, is innovating for greater and better student recruitment. I would also like to thank you very much, dear panelists. It was a really, really interesting webinar for me, and I believe for our audience. And I'll be happy for us to join us again on some of our next editions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so as I see that we don't have any more questions, I believe that we can call it a time. Again, thank you very much for taking the time, and I hope to see you soon again. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, thank you.